Hello everyone, welcome to the editorial analysis of the Shankar IAS Academy, and today's video is for the date of 21st of March 2025. So these are the topics for discussion. The first article discusses about the origin of the Devadasi system, and the second article discusses about the India-US relations in light of the recent isolation policy which has been taken by the US. Now look into the news titled Jingles of History Looking Back at Mysore's Devadasis. So here why it is in the news, because historian Janaki Nair talks about the rise of Devadasi system in Mysore, especially in this generation, and its abolition by the early 20th century. So here the historian had a talk on the abolition of the Devadasi and her dance and one of the Bangalore conferences, where they offered talks on overview about how the system was and how at one point it thrived as one of the major systems in Mysore province, and how the same system saw its abolition in the early 20th century. So in light of this article, let us see the basis about what the system was. Now looking into the origin, the term Devadasis means dancing girls. So the term had its origin from the Sanskrit language. And looking into the origin of presence, they go back to the 8th century. Prevalence of the Devadasis in 800 AD. So here the inscription was a virgin girl, 8 matters of land and 1000 cows and a swing were dedicated to a temple in the Maile village of Karnataka. So this brought in the proof of evidence of the presence of Devadasis. Now looking into presence of Devadasis, there were also evidences from the Jain, Shaivite and Vaishnavite temples and their inscriptions. Now looking into their establishment, they got their royal patronage from the Vadiyas of Mysore, and through that they established a system by the end of the 10th century, and they were known to provide services such as dancing, singing, drum beating, carrying sacred aratis and practicing in temple processions. So that's how they gained their importance in the society. And the girls who were dedicated as Devadasis were given training in both dance, nritya and in also vocal music called Geeta. So the Krishna Raja Vadayar III, he had employed Chinnaya Pillai, who is known for his Bharatanatyam as well as his other dance forms of the Tanjavur quartet, to train the dancers. So here, through the establishment of having royal patronage, having an established system, helping them to learn a lot of arts and culture, made them one of the most important people of the society. Now looking into their rising of this social status, they gained a wider presence, especially in the areas of Mysore, Bangalore, Mulbagal, Kadur and Narasipur and so on. So all of these places are in Karnataka. Then they gained social support, where they got in the royal patronage, help from the merchants, landlords and the art connoisseurs. So here connoisseurs, we know how one person has a vast knowledge, so they were in having a lot of support from all of these different communities of the society, and they formed a new social class where they had the right to own lands of inheritance, where they brought in the rules of etiquettes and also even having their own panchayats. So they brought in the involvement of diverse caste groups, where they involved women from different caste groups such as Kurubas, Bedas, Gangadigara, Vokkaligas, Telugu Banajigas and the Lingayats. So through all of these, they rise through their social status. And also they brought in the matrilineal tradition, where there was adoption of girls through females and having matrilineal inheritance system. And looking into the importance of stature in the weddings, processions, festivals and all, during several weddings, apart from the groom, the Devadasis had to tie a second thali. It's an auspicious thread which has been used used in the marriages in South India, so around the bride neck. So that's the social status they were given, and they were very important person in any weddings, as they were believed to bring in positive and auspicious energy. So the Devadasis enjoyed significant wealth and social standing in the society, but by the 18th century they saw their decline. The whole community saw their decline around 18th century. Now looking for the factors for decline, first it was seen as an exploitation of women within the uh, within the system in itself by many, and also there were influence of the western morality. So we all know during the 18th 19th century we all were under the colonialism of the British. So through the influence of the western morality, there were ideas on how it was equated to the system of prostitution, and also they that was brought in the anti-nautch movement. So in Hindi, nautch means dance. So there was movement of anti-nautch where in the 19th and 20th centuries there was aim to abolish, as they were mostly gifted to the temple for the procession of dance, that is Dasi Atam means it was a dance which was more erotic in nature. So because of this, they brought in the anti-nautch movement and sanitizing the Sadir. So here Sadir would be the area where women of the dominant caste learn and perform dance. So these are one of the reasons for their decline, and it led to the abolition in 1947 totally by the Madrasa Abolition Devadasi Abolition Act of 1947. So looking into the administrative changes, one of the major change was brought by the Muzirai Commissioner A. Srinivasa Charlu in 1989. So this commission had brought in the abolition of the system in the Madras Presidency. So it discontinued the appointment, especially in the areas of Mysore, Kadur, Tumkur, Kolar, and other regions. And they brought in even more progressive acts such as the Infant Marriage Regulation 1894, where they banned marriages for girls below 8 years around the gap of a 30-year-old man. Next, they brought in the Hindu women's property rights in 1933, where they granted Hindu women rights to inherit the property. So Mysore was the first in India to abolish in 1908 to 1909 of the Devadasi system, and even before the 1947 Act. So now it has been totally abolished in India throughout. Now let us move on to a mains practice question. Discuss the historical evolution of the Devadasi system in India. How has the system transformed over time, and what legal social measures have been taken to address its challenges? So I ask the students to put in their answer in the comment section. Now look into the article titled The Assault on Multilateralism and International Law. So why this article is in the news? Because the US unilateral actions are a turning point and could invite global retaliation. This is also a chance for non-Western nations to take up leadership roles. So here the article is mainly about how the US as a global power and as a country are taking unilateral actions and making them as a unilateral country to withdraw from major world organizations such as the World Trade Organization, such as the UN Human Rights Commission, and other various important global organizations, and how they stand as a global retaliation by being a unilateral country. But this withdrawal of the US can also stand as a major chance for other non-Western countries and nations to take up leadership roles in those particular organizations. So this is a very interesting article. We will be seeing what are the consequences related to this withdrawal, where we need to understand the global power of US, their importance on different organizations, and what would be the consequences and how it would be affecting India also. You are looking into US withdrawal from multilateral institutions. We can see how in the article it has been criticized how the US, through the action of the withdrawal, it stands as assault, or it stands as a hurdle when it comes to prospering the importance of multilateralism, where they want to stay as a country being a unilateral. So the key entities targeted is World Health Organization WHO, United Nations Human Rights Council UNHRC, Paris Climate Change. So these are some of the organizations that US would have, they have withdrawn, and they have also brought in sanctions on the International Criminal Court and its officials. So they are not part of the International Criminal Court, but US is one of the most important governing body in the ICC and in the UN also. So if there is no participation or withdrawal of US from the ICC, it would lead to consequences such as funding. It would have, as they can restrict the visas of any officials who are in the ICC to investigate about any criminal cases. So because at one point ICC had brought in blame, not blame, but they have given sanctions on the US on their human rights violation, on their war related crimes violations and so on. So in act of it, the US is also targeting to put sanctions on the ICC, so it will lead to a major change. And also by the US there is introduction of the Defund Act. So here it is allowing the US to withdraw from the United Nations in itself. So it's more than the Brexit. This would be one of the most important exit of one of the major global power of the society. Now looking into this political and economic isolationism, so here it stands as a threat to UN's legitimacy. Here that introduction of the Defund Act can threaten the UN, such as UN's Participation Act of 1947 and United Nations Headquarters Agreement of 1947. So here the UN Participation Act governs the participation of the US, and also this act UN Headquarters Agreement brings in the importance of the governing legislation of the US. So if the US is withdrawing through this act, the consequences would be it ends the US financial contributions to the UN, because we all know that how US is an important funding partner to many major organizations, and also prohibits US participation in the UN peacekeeping operations. So if any war or crime related to US would have the limelight, it cannot be intervened by the UN. Thus there cannot be any processes related to peacekeeping operations in the US. So these are the major consequences when it comes to this isolation of the whole global power itself. Now looking into the sanctions on the ICC, here the US imposes sanctions on the International Criminal Court. ICC is known for prosecuting genocide, crimes against humanity and war crimes. So one of the US Chief Prosecutor, Robert H. Jackson, have stressed the rule of law over power. So if this sanctions by US on the ICC would have major changes in addressing the prosecutions, genocides, crimes, whichever is happening in the society in itself. Now looking into the trade troubles, Trump's economic nationalism have led to many tariff changes under the name of national security or their claims. So historically, because of how worsening of the economic during the World War II has brought in the smooth Hawley Tariff Act in 1930, and this has led to the GATT in 1947, where it led to the WTO formation, that is the World Trade Organization. Because of the isolation by the US, it slowly led to the formation of WTO to increase the multilateralism. But now in today's time, again Trump's administration as bringing in the increase of the same isolation. So if this isolation happens, it would bring crisis to the World Trade Organization, as US can bring in the blockade on the important body, that is the appellate body appointments in dispute resolution. So we as a country, we are having lot of bias. We as a country, we feel that there is a lot of biases on the developing country like India in one of the biggest organizations like the WTO. Now imagine US withdrawing from the whole WTO, and how having a dispute resolution related to trade tariffs can stand as a major problem. So if they withdraw, then nobody can sanction or nobody can question US on their tariff rates and so on, and this stands as a biggest problem for any developing countries in return. So let us see the consequences when it comes to India and US ties. Here we have enhanced defense collaboration. India has to acquire F-35 sled jets and 6 FBI surveillance aircrafts. International traffic on arms regulation reforms have brought into easy defense trade, having collaborations on autonomous defense tech under Asia, bringing in counter-terrorism, and having enhanced cooperation on organized crimes and intelligence sharing is one of the major important India and US ties. So all of these can be affected through this isolation also. So looking into trade and economic growth, through the bilateral trade agreement, we have enhanced our investments. Thus, in US, it creates 30,000 plus jobs for the Indians. There is increased oil and gas imports from the US, and US has been backing India's entry into the International Energy Agency. So, for a country like India, we are involving to bring in more importance on the clean energy associations and sustainable development. So, if there is this withdrawal, it can affect India, especially through these factors. Then looking into education and skilled workforce, it can be affected as the 3 lakh Indian students contribute to US. Then having simplified visa processes can affect for professionals and students. Bringing in technology and innovative drives such as the AI involvement, semiconductors involvement, and space tech, and such as US and India Trust Initiative can all be affected. And also collaboration on quantum computing and biotechnology can have their increased tariff rates during imports. And strategic mineral recovery initiative can also be affected if there is this withdrawalism. Now looking in the maritime, the commitment to Quad, importance of Indo-Pacific and regional security, strategizing the Indian Ocean region can all be affected. So, what would be the way forward for this isolation by US is first strengthening the multilateralism by different countries, promoting cooperation over coercion, then protecting the rules-based global order, strengthening the enforcement mechanisms for human rights. So, withdrawal of US from the UNHRC again has its own drastic consequences, so there needs to be mechanism for enforcement of the human rights, then climate change and trade regulations, resisting the US isolationism by different countries. Of course, the other countries would be having the power to take leadership, but this can also lead to isolationism, so there needs to be even more debate on it, and diversifying global alliances, seizing the leadership opportunities, and advocating for the UNSC reforms. So I hope the article is clear. This is the main question. Discuss the recent developments in Indian-US relations, focusing on defense cooperation, trade, energy security, technology collaboration, and regional security. How these advancements impact India's strategic interest. So here you can also speak about American first policy and how it impacted the trade, especially during the Trump's administration and from 2017 to 2020, and now how there is withdrawal of this American first policy in the impact of US isolation, as US now feels that after this much years they don't want the first preference, so American first policy need to be withdrawn. So you can see how the dynamics are changing from at one point how in a short period it strengthened the US global power, and now after making their economy stable, now withdrawing of that policy can impact other countries also. So you can also use this in your answer. I asked the students to put in the answers and it will be reviewed. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you are at the end of the video. Don't forget to give a like, comment and a share, and to further not to miss any other content, subscribe to our channel. Thank you and have a nice day.